Hello everybody and welcome to Real Talk with Renee and Steve. My name's Renee Eves and I am here with my strapping young co-host Steve Dixon. We're here to get real about news, politics, unpack what's going on in the mainstream media, the narrative from a much different or clearer, should I say, perspective.
Absolutely, Renee. I mean, the beauty of Real Talk is we're going to fill the gap where mainstream media have let the world down. We're not going to give you half a story. We're going to give you both sides of the story. So get ready to be excited, hang on to your seat, and we're just going to march forward. And in that marching forward, I want to start off with a book that Renee wrote a number of years ago. It's called Flirt with Justice. And Renee, in this book, you talk about a particular point where you're dealing with the idiots and your son's involved in this. So give us a quick wrap up on what happened.
Okay, the idiots. So it was a really exciting chapter, not very. What happened was I was embroiled, if I could use the word, in a very stressful legal matter. Any of you that have engaged lawyers know it's not for the faint-hearted. So I had to go in and see a bunch of lawyers and barristers on this day. My son was a toddler at the time. And I said to him, look, we're going to go to the park, but we just have to see some idiots first and then we're done. We're straight to the park. So I didn't even think about it. I just, said it at the time. So fast forward, we're in this meeting. It gets very heated. It was not going well. And my son's sitting in the corner with his crayons and his colouring book. And when there's this silence, because, there was a lot of conflict in this meeting, he sticks his head up and said, Mum, you said we were going to see the idiots today. When are we seeing the idiots? And I said, it was a complete Erin Brockovich moment. Son, that's what we're doing. We are seeing the idiots. We're seeing them right now. And suffice to say, things with my lawyers did not go very well from that point. I ended up self-representing, and that's what Flirt with Justice is about. The journey, self-representing, and eventually winning my case.
Renee, and there's another topic in that book, and you were being very transparent at this particular point in time as well. You were up on stage dancing with Jimmy Barnes, which was part of your job at the time. Tell us a little bit about what happened there.
Oh, goodness. So isn't it good when you can look back and laugh? But I sure can say it was not funny at the time. So when you go to a Jimmy Barnes concert, obviously, Jimmy's going to go flat out with his singing. And as a dancer, if you're back up, you've got to go flat out. He was doing singing the mashed potato, dun dun. And so I'm throwing my arms in the air, doing the mashed potato. Now, I think it would be best if I share a photo with what happened so our viewers can guess what might have occurred next. That's right. Have a look at this photo, guys. It all of a sudden, for a moment, was not the Jimmy Barnes concert anymore. It was the Renee Eves show. So the crowd went wild. I didn't understand why. I soon realised and quickly did a little bit of tucking, and the show must go on. I carried on, but it was an absolute, I was so embarrassed. It was one of those moments where I just wanted to run backstage and cry. But all these years later, oh gosh, I have a laugh about it.
You handle it well and you moved on in life, and that's what we all do. Learn from your mistakes, and hopefully you won't have that problem of things popping out in front of the world.
Yeah, that's it, Steve. And speaking of popping out in front of the world, holy smokes, I've read this a few times. It's called Breaking the Silence with Steve Dixon. Oh my goodness, what a journey you've been on, Steve. I just really enjoyed that read. And what really stood out for me was your business acumen from such a young age. I'm there and I'm trying to picture these $2 notes that you're talking about. And I can't even remember a time when there was $2 notes. But tell everybody what happened, because I think it's a real laugh.
Renee, my parents got forced off the land through a drought in 1968, moved to Brisbane, bought a caravan park, and at that stage they had 25 sites. Within a few years, it was one of the biggest caravan parks in Queensland, and I was a young bloke, and my dad was always trying to motivate me to get me doing things. And I'm dyslexic, so I found it very difficult at school, but Dad put me in a position where we had a big captured audience at the caravan park, and I installed 3 pinball machines, a jukebox and a pool table, and I was getting 50% of the income stream coming in from that. And I realised there's only a door between the pinball room in our garage and getting into our swimming pool. And I thought, geez, it's hot in summer, so I'll charge people 30 cents a head, and I packed them in like sardines into the swimming pool, and I was making plenty of coin. So what I ended up doing was convert the coin to $2 notes, and I would dutifully iron them. And they were in crispy shape, all in numerological order, and they were in $1,000 packs, which I ended up putting in. I'd say $4,000 in $2 notes. And what I used to do was listen to 4BC, and I was always trying to win the $2 note competition because you could win a couple of grand, when it had built up to a certain stage. But unfortunately, I never did. But that $4,000 that I'd earned went towards buying my very first car. So I felt really, really fortunate that Dad had put me into that position and driven me a bit. But my advice would be to all parents out there, if your kids have got any sort of a learning disability, push them along. They may be inspired to launch themselves into many, many different areas. Some will be entrepreneurial, some will be artists. They'll all do different things in life, but give them that helping hand.
Wow, Stephen, you know what else stood out in that story for me? I couldn't quite understand why you were putting the notes underneath the carpet.
But really simple, so nobody'd steal my money.
What happened if it caught fire?
Well, that's what the alfoil was for, but I think in hindsight, it probably would have baked it really well.
Well, that was my next question. Oh my God, move over Paul Hogan. This is a hustler from way back, Let's get started. Let's get on with the show. Wow, so there's a little bit of a step back in time to a part of history that we almost don't even recall now. It seems unrecognisable. I really feel like we've moved into almost this weird universe, Steve.
Renee, we've been so blessed to live through the history that we've lived through. They've been very, very good times, but the last 3 years, I don't think they've been very good times at all. I think it's impacted so many people with border closures, mandates, the jabby thing, you name it. There's been some pretty tough times for many people throughout the world, but there is ways of moving forward and there are ways of doing things better.
Absolutely. Well said, Steve. And I think when we go back in history, it's important to look at people that had the spine to stand up, because I know there are a few people, but they're few and far between, that are saying, hang on, something's not right here. We've got to say something. We've got to do something. And what comes to mind for me when I think about this is the Rosa Parks story. I love that story. So a coloured lady back in the day, she decided on this one day, I'm not going to stand up on the bus and move to the back for I'll call it white, male, pale and stale man. She said, no, in all seriousness, she said, I'm going to move to the front where I belong. And that is the end of story. She got arrested and it sparked the biggest boycott in history, the bus boycott. It ended segregation between coloured people and white people on the public transport system. So how long had that been going on before Rosa said, no, this isn't right. We're not going to do it this way. It's got to stop. And she put her money where her mouth was. She took it in her stride and saw it all the way through. And that's what ended segregation. So I think we need to see people that are willing to do similar to what Rosa did back then.
Renee, you're right on the money, and it's quite amazing what history teaches us all, because mainstream media is the reason why we've started our show. And I want to give you a quote from a bloke who I believe he was way ahead of his time, Malcolm X, and we're going to throw it up on the board here behind me. Malcolm X, and this is a quote from the early 1960s. This is the media, an irresponsible media. It will make the criminals look like he is the victim, and it will make the victim look like he is the criminal. If you aren't careful, the media will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. This is the sort of propaganda tactic that I will call psychological warfare. Isn't that quite incredible? A gentleman from the 1960s who was an absolute hero, who spoke the truth about what the media are going to be like in 2022. They killed him. I'm kind of hoping they don't shoot Renee and I for putting out the whole gospel truth and the other side of the story, but that's what we're going to do for the Australian people, because we really want to make a difference.
Absolutely, Steve. It's almost like that quote has been written for 2022. You wouldn't have known it was from that long ago. I think there is no such thing as free speak. We're not seeing it in the media. We're not seeing it on social media. It's I saw something the other day on Gerard Rennick's page. I don't know if you saw it, was to do with the masks and the consequences of what masks are having on our environment.
Well, actually, that topic is very much a part of everything I believe in, because I'm a very, very strong defender of the environment. If we could do anything as human beings, it is let's clean up the oceans. But on that topic, you think back, plastics were the boogeyman, and they've been pretty damaging to our environment. You know, the little rings off the milk bottle caps get caught around the bird's neck, and the turtles eat the plastics and they get that floating disease which kills them. And then you move forward to cigarette butts. You know, they were a terrible thing on our environment as well. People dump them on the ground, the fish eat them, they're causing these toxic buildups in our sea life. And now today, we've got birds that are being strangled by these bloody masks. They're getting tied up and it's killing our wildlife. Now, this is becoming an absolute environmental nightmare, but I think it's actually doing more to our children as well.
Oh, it absolutely is. Kids can't see the expressions on people's faces. I mean, these face nappies have really been pushed to the limit now. I know you're very passionate about birds, Steve. For those of you that don't know, Steve's an avid bird lover. He used to have this bird that came along called Danielle. And anyway, I don't know if Danielle became woke and identified as something else. Danielle is now Danny. And in any case, what happened was a bird recently ran into Steve's window, if I remember the story correctly. And Steve's wife told me that Steve was in the backyard, true story, giving mouth to mouth and chest compressions to a bird. Is that true, Steve?
100%. We live in a really lovely environmental area, and just on Danny for a start, Danny we thought was a male, and Danny ended up being a female, which my wife looked them up. Magpies are, you know, pretty coloured. They're black and white, but the male is distinctively different to the female. So that's Danny sorted out. But regularly where I live, we get a lot of birds that smash into our back windows, and I'll go downstairs and I will give them mouth to mouth, or I will drag them out of the pool, and the majority of the time they live. In this particular instance, we lost this one, and it's pretty sad. I don't like seeing wildlife die at all. I actually put huntsman spiders outside the house these days, to my wife's detestment. She just doesn't like me doing that at all, but I can't help it. I like animals.
You've got a soft spot for these birds. But back to the masks on that, they are absolutely wrecking wildlife. And there's more about these masks than meet the eye. I believe personally it's this basically a PR campaign to show other people, yep, I'm believing, yep, I'm seeing, and it really is free advertising. That's just my opinion. People might think it keeps them safe. If you do, that's a matter for you. I don't.
Renee, sorry about butting in on you. I got to butt in on you because I went down to the beach the other day and I saw somebody out swimming in the surf with a mask on. I mean, seriously.
No.
Couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it.
I agree, and we've just gone too far with this mask thing as far as I'm concerned. Like, you look at these kids at the moment, I don't know if you've seen the article, but kids are paying off fines that they received for not wearing a mask. I just can't wrap my head around how anyone thinks that is normal. And if you think back, there was a time, I'll grab a photo of it and get them to put it up for you here, but it's a photo of a lady on a beach in Italy, and I think it's 1957, and she's getting a fine for wearing a bikini. She's wearing a bikini on the beach and she receives a fine. Now, we laugh about that and we think, oh, that's absolutely outrageous. What a joke. Was that real? But is that what's going to happen moving forward? Are people going to look back at this time and say, we've got children paying off fines because they weren't wearing a mask?
Renee, I'll encourage people. Be a rebel. Be a Rosa Parks. Be a Malcolm X. You know, be a Dr. Luke McClendon. And Renee, tell us a little bit about Luke McClendon. You've had him to your house. You know the gentleman really well. He just happened to be one of my very good friend's brothers, which I didn't know until recent times. He's one of these heroes as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, he's a hero. He is going to be the Rosa Parks of 2022. So those of you that don't know him, he is a well-renowned gynecologist and obstetrician, and he has spoken up by tabling what he has seen with regard to reactions from the jabs in pregnant women. Now, I can't even comprehend for a single moment why anyone would stand up and do that and say that unless what they were seeing was deeply concerning, because let's face it, that's your career gone out the window when you stand up and you speak like that. It's not popular, it's not easy, and I'm really excited to hopefully have him on this show at some point, because I want to tap into what gave him the courage to actually be that guy. And I don't speak for him, but I dare say he just couldn't put his head on his pillow at night and actually live with what he was seeing and not say something. And I really want to encourage people, if you're seeing something that isn't right, if it feels wrong, you know, get up there, say something.
It's the Australian way. You know, we are losing. We have had it taken away from us. We've had it mandated out of us. We've had it jabbed out of us, but I know the Australian spirit is still alive, and you know what? I want to throw petrol on that fire and I want to bring it back to life, and I know we can all make a difference. Let's see some more Australian heroes.
FitCare Support Services are changing the game in disability support services. At FitCare, we believe everyone deserves to move, eat and live life to the fullest, so everything we do has a healthy vibe. We assist with daily living, social outings and everything in between, including a weekly activity schedule full of fun fitness activities, so you can come and see what we're all about. For disability support that helps you achieve your wellbeing goals, visit fitcaresupportservices.com.au or dial 1300 FitCare.
And something that I want to touch on, Steve, was the days when medical cannabis was completely taboo, when it was not a popular thing to speak out about it. And I could imagine just how confronting it would be being a politician and having to like stick your hand up and say, you know, guys, there's something I want to talk about, knowing everyone's probably, you know, I don't know if they were snickering or what they were doing, but I do recall it being a really, really taboo subject.
Renee, that was probably one of the most, I suppose, moving parts of my life, and it was a defining part in my political career. It was a recipe for the end of my political career, to be honest. But how it all came about, I had a number of parents who were brought to my office, and they had children who the parents were forced to go to the black market to buy medical cannabis to give to their children. And these children had epilepsy, tremors, seizures, you name it, a huge variety of different ailments and illnesses, and this was actually helping them. And they showed me, the before and after photographs, the videos of their children, and I met all of these families in my office. And was I moved? The answer is absolutely yes. And I knew at that stage I got to make a difference. So I studied, and I found out that Australia produces half of the opium supply in the world out of Tasmania. And opium is just killing thousands and thousands of people. Not only is it killing people, they're becoming addicted to it. And I saw medical cannabis as a bit of a white knight, something that can make a difference, doesn't kill people, it fills the gap and makes the difference. And I thought, why should people have to go to the black market to buy an illegal product that's helping their children? That's just morally wrong, practically wrong. And from a business sense, I thought, Australia, Queensland, we could become the rock stars of the medical cannabis world and really start a brand new enterprise, a new business that's just going to grow and going to help many, many people throughout the world. So, I pretty well put my career on the line for that, and I ended up leaving the LNP because they thought it was funny. They thought it was all about drug addicts, and they had a bit of a laugh and a giggle, and there was a big fight internally within our parliamentary colleagues' room. And there was a number of my colleagues that backed me, but when it came time, I was doing a private members bill, and Cameron Dick had actually then generated a bill that the Labor Party were going to put forward, and he asked me to come to his office. We went through it, the twos and fro's, and I actually agreed with Cameron Dick, and I supported that, as many people did. And I just said I'll cross the floor and vote with Labor. And everybody ended up coming together. The bill went through the Parliament, and now we are where we are today. But was it tough? Absolutely. And was it the right thing to do? Even more so. I felt so passionate about this, but who wouldn't bend over backwards to help children that have got, these ailments, epilepsy, seizures, tremors? I mean, you would have to be a heathen not to want to do that. So I felt very, very proud. But, that was a little part of my life, and I'm very proud to look back at it, probably the defining moment, and that's why I'm here on this show now. But transitioning across now to mainstream media, and I want to talk about something that's probably going to embarrass Renee just a little tiny bit, maybe a lot, but
Can't be worse than the Jimmy Barnes incident.
oh no,
Surely not.
to me, I couldn't believe this. Renee sent me through a video. She was watching Neighbours after 38 years. Finally, it had come to an end, and the happiest day of my life. I'd only ever watched it twice in my whole life. I mean, seriously, Neighbours is just, it's watching paint dry or grass grow. That's a bit more exciting for me. But Renee sent me this video of her bellowing and crying and carrying on like a bloody pork chop because Neighbours had come to an end. Give us your take on that.
Yeah, true story. True story, says the man that was doing chest compressions and giving mouth to mouth to a bird last week. Yes, I was crying at the end of Neighbours, okay? It was the finale. What it signalled for me was, I don't know, a time as a kid where it was like, I don't know, it was simple. It was 7 o'clock on Channel 10 and you just switch on and you could see what was happening on Ramsay Street with Scott and Charlene. And just for your information, Steve, Jane and Mike rekindled their love. But I don't know what triggered me into tears. And with what's going on in mainstream, which is actually not a lot, we're losing old soap favourites like that remind us of a better time. And it was a bit gloomy. I picked myself up. And what do you suggest that people watch? What did you watch when you were a kid?
Well, it was funny when you said Jane and Mike there, because I remembered I used to read about Dick and Jane when I was a kid at school. And I'm transitioning across to a bit of an unusual story that I had. When I was at school in grade 3, I had a school teacher. I was terrible at reading, as I said earlier in the interview. I'm dyslexic, so I found it difficult to read and write. And this particular teacher said to me, because I was so bad at reading, I couldn't even read Dick and Jane properly. He said to me, "You are nothing but a stupid bastard." And that lived with me my whole life. And it made me stronger and it made me think about things. But getting back to what I watched on TV at that stage, I used to love nothing better than watching, what is his name? Gigantor. Gigantor, bigger than big, stronger than strong, ready to fight that fight. Gigantor.
Fight for right against wrong. Gigantor. Gigantor. Gigantor.
But it was brilliant. And Iron Man, they were the sort of things I watched as a kid, and remembering they were in black and white back in those days.
And I bet it brought some life back into you. You mentioned, that you're dyslexic, and I think it's phenomenal. You've had this unbelievable career in politics, and there are so many people out there that have, whether it be a disability or a learning difficulty, and they just think, I can't do that. And look, you've broken the mold, you've gone out and done that, you've done tremendous things, and I think it really does speak to your character and it speaks to your true essence that you could do that. I'm happy that you enjoyed Gigantor as well, and that was a happy part of your childhood. Personally, myself, I believed I was going to end up with Fonzie. I don't know if you watched Happy Days.
Oh, Pinky.
Yes.
Pinky ended up with Fonzie. I remember it. Fonzie was great. I loved Happy Days. I mean, there were some great shows on. Do you remember MASH?
Yes.
MASH was a show. It was about the Korean War, the 4077, I think they were called. That program actually went for longer than the Korean War itself.
Oh, really?
The physical Korean War.
Yep.
The Korean War's still going today, if you
Yep.
believe, our friends over in the north and south. But, this all gets down to kids, and there's something that I really, really liked when I used to be a member of Parliament. I'd go and talk at schools quite a bit, and I did talk about I had a learning disability, and what I would say to many, many children, I'm a kid who couldn't read and write all that well growing up. But what I said to kids, I said, if I can become a minister in government, you guys can do anything. So don't ever sit back there when somebody tells you that you're a silly bastard and you can't read or you can't do anything. You look them back in the eye and you go, yes, I can. You are capable of doing anything. If I can do it, you can do it. I've got confidence in every single young person out there today.
Oh, absolutely,
and that,
Steve.
you know what? That
So
leads
true.
us into a topic that we need to talk about. And this is a really, really controversial topic. Renee and I have been speaking about this for some time, but Renee, she's in the closet over this one a bit, and I'm going to get her out of the closet and tell you what she's been doing for nearly over a year. Kids today in our society, they play all these video games and they look at all this technology stuff, and it's affecting them. It's desensitizing them, and it's actually, making them used to blood and guts and people being ripped apart and people being murdered and women being raped, and these are on all these stupid games.
Oh, look, I mean, we've got kids that are taking their phones into school. I know my son, I'll jump on Instagram and I'll see all his friends have actually seen my story throughout the day, and I'll have a bit of a jibe with them and say, what are you doing on Instagram, when you're meant to be focusing on English? And it's just this constant connection to anywhere else other than where they are, which I think is just causing enormous damage. And the schools that are actually doing phone free, Steve, they have studies now that are showing their learning has increased by 90%.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's changing lives, but teachers don't have any control anymore. They're too scared. They can't say to the child, oh, you can't have the phone. That's a job for parents. And as parents, I know how hard it is. Trust me, I've got a teenager, but it actually can be done. It's a very direct process of identifying what the issue is, where they're using it, what they're using, what they're overusing, and then coming up with a solution moving forward. You can't do it as a punishment. You can't say to these kids, because I used to do it, that's it, I'm taking the phone, I've had enough. It doesn't work. It does not work to take a phone away as punishment. It has to be a new way and a new way forward and a new normal of doing things. And I think it's going to be very powerful, and it's absolutely needed. Now, Steve, I was with you on the recent election journey. I think that's what we could call it, a journey. It took a completely different path to what we anticipated, and I thought we could just share with our listeners what happened, where we're at, what you think about it, because it's one heck of a story.
Yeah, well, let's just start at the beginning of that, and I'll speak pretty quickly. Myself and a lady by the name of Rebecca Lloyd decided that we were going to run for the Senate above the line as grouped independents. Anyway, long story short is we ended up drawing the letter H above the line. Didn't like it that we just had a letter beside our name, but they were the rules and we were playing by them. So hence we go into the election period. The voting actually starts for pre-polling, and people start ringing me up and going, hey, the election staff told us you pulled out of the race or you're not running any longer, and if we vote in that box above the line with the letter H, your vote will be invalid. So we wrote a letter of complaint to the Electoral Commission. They didn't take too much notice. And we got in touch with the media. They didn't even want to know about it. They said, you haven't got any proof, it's all hearsay. So what we did was we actually recorded, I did it myself. I recorded 12 conversations with myself and the AEC, and 8 of those calls that I made, they told me exactly the same thing. They've either pulled out of the race, if you vote in that box above the line, your vote will be invalid, or they've withdrawn from the election altogether. I mean, what a bloody horror show this became for us. So we actually publicised that on our Facebook site on the Wednesday prior to the election, after letting the AEC know this is happening. And we got 5,000 shares. It just went nuts. And the AEC actually commented on our site and made some half-assed remark about, have you made a complaint to the AEC? Yeah, we had. Anyway, on the Friday, we went to the federal police, made a complaint to the federal police, and they're still investigating this matter right now, still today. And then on the Saturday, we were on election day, and we had a friend of ours go along to vote, and he video recorded being told exactly the same thing on election day, that these people have pulled out of the race, yada, yada, yada. So it's all gone from bad to worse. Then we've gone through the path of raising some money. We've hired a couple of barristers and a lawyer. They've investigated the matter. We are unable to go to the Court of Disputed Returns because we had to prove we had 200,000 witnesses saying that I would have won the election. That's just not going to happen. So it's quite amazing. We are still prosecuting this. We're writing a letter to the
we're
federal
writing
government.
a letter to the committee that oversees what happened during the election, which I think is look, we're going to do it and we're going to put our full, might behind it. But I've got a real issue with these committees that get together after the fact and have a powwow and they talk about, oh, what could we have done better? Let's do it better next time. I cannot believe, Steve, this goes to democracy in our country where Australian Electoral Commission staff, now whether it was deliberate or not, I don't care, they gave the wrong information to voters. And I cannot believe that this is not on every single news channel in the country. They're changing the course of the election. I know I get all like this about it, but I was with you alongside the journey, and I get outraged each time I think of it, because I don't know, putting a submission through to this committee, if it's going to change what goes on for the next election.
Renee, we have to do that, of which we are going to do anyway. We've gone through the legal process. We're actually dealing with other candidates who have got much deeper pockets than I have, because it's cost an absolute bomb to get us to the point we're at. So what we decided to do was just keep prosecuting the issue, because at the end of the day, the truth is the truth. People acted not only immorally, I believe illegally, giving false information to voters right across Australia, telling them that independents had either pulled out of the race, they've withdrawn, or if you vote in that box above the line, your vote will be invalid. Now here's the real kicker. And we're going to throw up a bit of a video behind us on the screen, and it relates to the United States. I saw a guy from a radio station over there just a couple of days ago, so this is really, really fresh. He's gone in to vote, and they've told him the candidate he was voting for had pulled out, no longer running the election. So he goes to the boss and said, what's going on? And this goes right up the food chain. It was directed from the top down. So gut feel is, I believe this could be systematic, and it could be going to happen in the midterms in the United States. Have a look at this video and you'll really understand what's going on.
Hi, so I just voted, and here's the thing. When I got my ballot, nice lady says, oh, just so you know, Matt Salmon has withdrawn. But he's on the ballot, but he's withdrawn. I said, why are you telling me this? Oh, we were told we should share that. Who told you that? Bill. Go to Bill. Who told you that? I'm trying to remember. Okay. He walks me to a woman. He's like, didn't you tell me? She goes, no, you told me. I go, who told you guys to do this? Our supervisor. Who's your supervisor? This is electioneering. You can't tell people who has withdrawn. Their name's on the ballot. It is what it is. And you know what the crap is, by the way? Well, Matt Salmon's withdrawn. Well, I was going to vote for Matt, but I can't stand Carrie, so I'll vote for Karen. What? This is exactly what they're doing. So I got the supervisor, who was a nice guy. He's like, look, I'm an archaeologist. We need to do better. I'm just a county employee. They want me to oversee this. And I said, all right, well then who the hell made the decision that it's okay to tell people Matt Salmon is withdrawn? You might as well tell people to vote for Carrie. Why not? Vote for Blake Masters. Vote for Sherry Sapir. And he said, well, the elections department said, if you want, you can share it. You don't have to, but if you want to, you can. It's okay. I go, that's not okay. That's literally illegal. So the Pima County Elections Department, once again, with their awesome trainer, Jesus Federico, who told people, give out Republican ballots to registered Democrats if they want, which is literally illegal. And the only reason that they realized they got caught is because I talked about it on my show, because I was told this by Kelly Ward. They're now, apparently, the same stupid department led by this incompetent woman in charge is having their employees at the county literally tell people that Matt Salmon has withdrawn. His name's on the ballot, but he's withdrawn. You're not supposed to say a damn thing. That's electioneering. What the hell, Pima County? What the hell, Constance Hargrove? What are you doing? They should all be fired.
And you know what, Steve? What I found the most bizarre about the AEC was that it was absolutely impossible to get a story about the Australian Electoral Commission misleading voters into the mainstream media.
Yeah, well, when you really start to look at Stifler's mum, an American Pie, seriously, they'll go out there and they'll advertise that in every newspaper in the land, on every TV station. But when it gets down to people being dudded by the AEC, the Australian Electoral Commission, Nobody wants to touch it. Nobody wants to talk about it.
Do you know what he's actually talking about, viewers? If you haven't seen the story, it was over every single network you can imagine. But the actress that played Stifler's mum, Jennifer Coolidge, I think is her name. The story was that she bedded 200 more men than I think she would have, allegedly, if she hadn't played that character, because she was getting more offers, I think. And it reminded me of a funny story, actually. Do you know Schoolies?
Yeah, on the Gold Coast.
Schoolies on the Gold Coast. So I was driving down the Gold Coast highway when my son was little. I always think of this, you know, when someone mentions something and it takes you back to another time. Anyway, so these schoolies are yelling out the car, "MILF, MILF, Stifler's mum." And my son winds down the window and he said, no, she's my mum. She's not Stifler's mum. And her name's not MILF. And yeah, very funny. But I think it's a compliment, apparently, to be referred to as Stifler's mum. I didn't take it as such. But it does go to show that it's a story that sells. It is absolutely ridiculous. It's funny, but it's not funny when you have a really serious story like what we were trying to pitch about democracy in our country, and these other crazy stories get airtime. And
Renee, I've never seen anything like it, but it does take me to the ABC. You know, the Australian broadcaster in Australia who cost the Australian taxpayers $1.2 billion a year. That's $1,200 million a year to deliver the most unethical journalism in our country. I mean, seriously, when we've got people living under bridges and sleeping in cars, our federal government funds these blood-sucking thieves for the cost of $1.2 billion. Something's got to be done about that.
Oh, yeah, they've got to be done. Sorry to butt in on you there, but I just started thinking about, because I know how passionate you get about your commenting, and you put some great comments. If you don't follow Steve, you should, because he drops down some absolute pearlers into the comment section under news articles. But I don't know if you've noticed, I think you have.
Oh, yeah.
ABC don't like customer feedback.
Well, I think the bit of customer feedback I've just given you, I really want to look into that, or the Australian government should be looking into it. It's called value for money. We're not getting it. You know, they are woke media. They're an unethical journalist, and I think they could do so much better. I used to love watching the ABC growing up as a kid, but they've just gone so far left field these days, and it's about getting value for money. Remembering this is taxpayers' dollars being spent to deliver a product that should give you both sides of the story. And that's why Real Talk's on the map, and we're going to make a real difference.
That's it, Steve. And people are getting squeezed. Like, look at the price of things right now. I know Con the Fruiterer here has probably got all the prices. Have you got them all in your head?
Oh, I got a few ideas about them.
He often recites, do you know how much this fruit or vegetable is today? And I say, no, Steve, I don't, but I've got a feeling you do. So maybe what is fruit and vegetables costing at the moment?
Well, it's quite funny, viewers, because it started off prior to the last federal election. I started following the cost of lettuce, and I started carrying on about lettuce. And I think it's quite funny now. It's become mainstream. When I first started following lettuce, they were $4.80 each, and then they peaked at about $12 each. And then you got a head of cabbage for $17. Tomatoes, $12 a bloody kilo. You know, the cost of living is just out of control.
So snow peas would almost be considered a luxury. I don't know what the price is, but I bet you do.
At my household, we don't call them snow peas. We call them no peas, because they're $34 a kilo. I've actually resorted to growing them ourselves. You know, we're growing our own vegetables at home now because we just can't afford it. But an exciting solution to that problem is that I've got a mate of mine that I've known for quite some time. He's actually setting up a parallel economy which is getting farmers to sell directly to local suburbs. So watch out for it. We're looking to get him on this show in the not too distant future, and he's going to tell us a whole lot more about that. But parallel economies are starting to take off like rocket ships. Elon Musk could be behind the whole thing. Anyway, keep watching this spot. We need some big changes.
That's what it's about, Steve. It's about us bringing to you what is important, what's going on in everyone's life, but more importantly, actually coming up with some creative solutions. We don't want to just get on here and harp about how difficult life is and how doomy and gloomy it is. We actually want to come up with some sort of solution for you. So we've come up with a solution for the mainstream that are putting out fear-based stories that are completely cycling the narrative around and around and around and making people quite depressed. We've decided, let's run a stampede of elephants through the comments in mainstream media, and I think it's working a treat.
Well, the story about elephants, it all started with Renee. She came up with this brilliant idea about the elephant in the room, and we've just added to that, and the people of Australia have put a turbo on it because they're making comments right across mainstream media. You're seeing elephants pop up everywhere. It's got to a point where some media are actually, knocking those elephants out. You've actually got to write a few lines with it as well. It's a really good idea, but keep the stampede going. Real Talk is all about telling the story of both sides, where mainstream media, you're going to get one side of the story. We all know that now. That's why nobody's watching them anymore. We're going to give you the whole wholesome truth. We're going to give you some really unusual stories, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing you in the not too distant future. So have a wonderful evening, and good night, Australia.
Good night, Australia.